Welcome back everyone to Gacha Interact. Today we're going to be talking about the first of the month. Now that it is the first of the month, we're going to be talking about the gacha revenue that has come out for the past month of May. So as we can see, the already revenue is kind of already pulled up here, and we are looking at the gachas that we have played. So we'll be talking about Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, Wuthering Waves, and Zenless Zone Zero. Now there are plenty of other obviously gachas in the past that have obviously stayed at the top and run around, so we'll be looking at those as well. Like normal, Love in Deep Space kind of taking its throne back. Pokemon going back up a little bit. Star Rail getting dethroned, but considering they came off of 100+ million in a month, kind of makes sense why they're coming back off of that right now. But they still are in third place, doing pretty well. And so let's go ahead and jump ahead and look at actually what is going to be what was actually during this month. So we have the month pulled up here for the month of May. You guys can see how we got off the casters banner from the previous month, which is why they were probably so, like, those numbers were extremely high. The last gacha revenue, we talked about that. And then technically at the very end of the month on the 30th, the Anaxa and Dr. Ratio banner started, which I'm sure Anaxa was still a pretty heavily pulled character. Definitely not as much as Casterus, but still helped a little bit there as well. And although his banner didn't start until the 30th, or technically I believe the end of the 29th, that still does kind of show, I guess, some reign. The first few days of at least a month still are the first few days of the banner. And then obviously towards the end, we have a character like Hyacine. I think Hyacine is an extremely good character for Casterus, so it makes sense why a lot of Casterus mains who have pulled a lot for there. We're probably going to be pulling for the Hyacine. Never mind, there's a Herder rerun, which the Herder is still an absolutely insane character as well. So really just an exceptionally good month for characters, for building, for kind of everything that Star Rail has to offer. Everything's been going pretty well for them, so it makes sense why they're still third place here.
Yeah, everything you talked about there, I would definitely agree with. Just looking at it, of course, with Anaxa, I think is somewhat of a hyped character, not as much as maybe Castrus was. I wasn't initially planning to pull Anaxa, and then I kind of made a turnaround and did pull him because after kind of witnessing how good he can be, he's actually really cool, and you can use him as a hyper carry. He can be good with the Herda. There's a lot of good things going for Anaxa. He's really free to play friendly, so I ended up pulling him myself, and maybe who knows, a lot of other players did the same thing. Dr. Ratio, I can't say he did a lot for the revenue. I mean, maybe people that wanted his light cone and didn't have it before. Maybe they wanted the Eidolons. We have personal friends that did that, so not a lot going there. So it's mainly Anaxa, but also mainly Hyacin. And like you talked about, people that had Castrus were definitely waiting for this character. And maybe even if they didn't have Castrus, Hyacin, we kind of just saw, kind of blew a lot of proportions out of the water when it came to sustainers because of her just true damage that she has. She does a lot of personal damage for being a healer in the team, which is just crazy. So she's pretty universal, and I think a lot of people maybe decided to go after that. Her light cone is extremely good, so revenue coming from that as well, possibly. And then, like you said, Vixen, the Herda getting a rerun, she's just a great character, so you can't go wrong with her. I'm sure a lot of people decided to get her if they didn't already have her, me being included. Maybe people getting her light cone on her rerun, people getting the Eidolon. So there's a lot going here for Star Rail. And like you said, even though last month, or I guess the month previous to May, was 100 million, and there were a lot of reasons for that, mainly being Castrus, we're still at 50 million, and ignoring the fact that that's half of 100 mil, 50 million is still really high. And as you can see on the chart, we're still at third place here with Star Rail, and that's really good. So Anaxa did really well for this, and Hyacin. I definitely think those are the top two candidates. Those are the two new characters for this month. So Star Rail's still in a very good place, I would say.
Yeah, and looking into the future for what they have planned, I still think that it's going to be extremely strong. You have a character like Finon coming out in the future, so that's going to help the next month's sales. So in general, I think that the next month is probably going to look very similar to this month, if not maybe a little bit higher. So they might be able to knock out Love and Deep Space or Pokemon if they decide, if Pokemon and Love and Deep Space actually kind of stay where they are. Now, looking at the next one, we have Genshin Impact. Now, thankfully, Genshin Impact kind of shot up a little bit higher than they were before, but plenty of other games kind of shot up on their own as well, and are still putting Genshin actually still a place lower just because of just basically other games still having good revenue.
Yeah, there's
so
a lot of
looking
green
at
on the
that,
chart in general.
yeah,
Just
a lot of
games
them are
doing
just
really well.
upgrades. Yeah, a lot of them are just going up higher, which is still kind of cool to see. Even still here with Genshin, they still did get up to 36 or almost 37 mil. And once again, this is the idea that if you look back at the actual banners that we had for Genshin during that time period, in the last month, you had the ending of the second half, really, of Veressa and Shanyun, and then Shilonen and Venti kind of coming out. The thing with the Shilonen and Venti is most people, the only real character to pull really here is Shilonen. If the very few stragglers that wanted to pull Venti kind of come out of the woodwork, then maybe that would have been some pulls. Veressa and Jeonyun were probably done for with the pulling at that point, so that's why April was pretty low in terms of pulls. It was practically just Shilonen kind of carrying everything on her back, which probably sitting at 20 mil by herself is still insane as well. But then we look at the next month, which once again has the ending of the Shilonen and Venti pulls, which once again is only like a week, so it doesn't really matter that much. But the majority of everything was actually the next two things that we have. So we have the Shilon or the Navia and Escoffier banners. Escoffier being a very good character for a future character Skirk, also very good character for some other cryo DPSs. Navia still being an exceptionally strong and good character. We talked about that in our Pull Not to Pull as well. And then obviously the Inazuma Chronicled Wish popped up here. So even with that, I think that probably also made some pretty good pulls, because let's be honest, probably not a lot of people are pulling the Raiden and Kanish banner repeat, so probably some of the other extra sales and maybe the latter end of this month probably had to do with the Chronicled Wish that we have here.
Yeah, for me, it definitely mostly rides on Escoffier. I feel like Escoffier was a character that, yes, the Skirk people were waiting for. I was never planning to get Skirk, and so maybe some of you lie in this boat where I'm going with this. Escoffier was just so powerful when she came out, and with the pre-releases too, and everything leading up to her release. She's just so powerful that you don't even need to have Skirk to also have still a very high desire of just having a Escoffier. Like, we've talked about this in the past before, Vixen, and maybe some of you agree with this, maybe some of you disagree with this, but I at least am of the opinion that if you have to choose Escoffier or Skirk, you only get one. For me, it has to be Escoffier, because I feel like any account, no matter what it may look like, can live without Skirk more than living without Escoffier, because Escoffier is the buffer. She's going to work for other cryo units, and heck, even other hydro units, technically speaking, because those are part of what she's buffing. It's not just that it's cryo. Yes, she's the cryo character, but she's buffing hydro just as much as she's buffing cryo, provided that's all in the freeze comp. So that's just going to have a lot of versatility, and you don't need Skirk to do it. Skirk just needs Escoffier, if that makes sense. So, like, if you already have these cool DPSs, Hydro or Cryo, Escoffier just has value, And so, as a support unit, I think she really, and here's the point where I was going with this, I think she really surprised the people that weren't planning to get Skirk into, oh wait, this character is actually so good, I might get her anyways, and maybe I didn't have the, the pulls saved up because they weren't originally planning to pull Escoffier because they knew they didn't want Skirk, but they turn around and, oh, I got to spend maybe a little bit just to guarantee my Escoffier, because I wasn't planning for that. And that was me, for sure. I was not planning to go after Skirk, and so Escoffier was kind of sitting on the fence for me. I was like, well, I'll just see how she turns out, because I did get Risley on one of his recent reruns, so that kind of just, everything changed for me as far as pulling plans went. So I think maybe there's other people like that. I think Escoffier has a lot of this revenue of 36 mil for this month riding on her. Navia has a fair amount just because she's a good character, and I think it's been a while since she had a rerun. Just a solid character to get in general. But also, like you said, Vixen, the Inazuma Chronicled Wish, I know there's people that have been waiting for that. Now, yes, most people are going to be like, oh, it's bad value, don't wish on it. The weapon banner is terrible. It's 10 more, pity than the actual weapon banner, blah, 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 right? Oh, the characters aren't meta anymore. But they're still, like, solid characters, desirable characters. Just characters that we like, characters that we want, that are in there. And, of course, maybe some aren't. Like, I don't know, Ayato gets hated on a lot because he's a bland character, which is fair. But point being is that a lot of people were waiting for the Inazuma Chronicled Wish. And I think, similar to Escoffier, it came a little sooner than maybe some people anticipated. They're rolling this out. We thought the Chronicled Wishes would be a lot further apart, like maybe a year apart. They would have one Chronicled Wish per point X patch. Like, okay, so we had the Mondstadt Chronicled Wish, wherever we had that, I forget, but we had that, whether that was late 3.x or early 4.x. I think it was middle, actually, of 4.x. Okay, so Leeway Chronicled Wish is going to be somewhere in Natlan. And it was. So, okay, now the Inazuma Chronicled Wish has to be somewhere in the 6.x, right? But no, here it is, right here in sort of the mid to late Natlan. So I think it just came around earlier. catching people off guard to where they have to spend, especially if they were waiting for it. And then, like you said, Kanish Raiden. People who want the Raiden cons, they don't have C2 yet. Okay, sure. Kanish, people that wanted him didn't pick him up on his first run. This is his first rerun, so there's that. And his weapon's pretty good, but honestly, it's also the fact that this banner is pretty recent. So like I said, I think Escoffier has most of the revenue sitting on her for this month.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that in general, it's mostly just Escoffier riding everything. Once again, like you said, just the backups of the other characters. The probably even second to her is probably not even Navi. It's probably I mean, it might be Navia just because of the banner itself. They probably combine it together, but it's
And
still
the
an
longer
interesting
duration,
kind of,
maybe.
yeah, it's kind of an interesting run either way you look at it. But the next group that we're going to be bringing up is looking at Wuthering Waves next. So Wuthering Waves dropped a little bit from last time, but just like Genshin, even though it dropped in placement, it still gained more revenue. Not a stellar month, but still doing better than it did next month or the previous month. So it's not necessarily doing terrible. It's at 25.6 for this past month. And looking at it, what we had during that time period, at the very end of April, we had Zani and the first anniversary Resonator convene, phase 1. So that was kind of the first thing that kind of came up with it. Zani, a lot of people, I think, once again, was probably one of those other characters that not a lot of people thought they were going to pick up. She came out, everybody's like, okay, now I have to pull. So I think it's just one of those characters that I think a lot of people enjoyed in the story and then wanted to grab afterwards as well. Still a pretty good character. Never mind that you have characters like Jian, Lilin, Zheji, Shengli Yao, and Phoebe that are still pretty good units here and there, depending on which character you choose. Them and their weapons are still and are available during this Resonator kind of anniversary event thing where they're bringing back a lot of old characters, and this was just phase 1, and this only lasted until the 22nd of May. So definitely a lot of pulls coming from this banner, which makes sense why it probably did better than its previous month, just because also that anniversary banner did pretty well. And the next little bit was the next part, which we have the next Resonator phase 2, and then also we have Siachona, however you're going to say her name. She came out also with another phase as well. So another brand new character with characters like Jin Si, Chang Li, Carlotta, Rochia, and Blant. A lot of newer characters. So it still had a solid week to about 7 or 8, 9 days or something like that after the time period of when it was going to be, gone. So I think this is absolutely insane to have kind of done and together. So I still think that this is a very good reason to show that this is also probably another placement where a lot of pulls came from. I think the anniversary Resonator convenes did a lot of pulled a lot of weight for the revenue that's actually being out right now. Probably the same reason with the Chronicle Wish, like you were talking about, Rift, where a lot of people were like, oh, okay, I'm going to be pulling, I'll save my pulls for XYZ character that's going to come out in the future. These other cool characters are looking cool. I'll pick one up now because I know that this character they've got to wait another 3, maybe 2 or 3 patches, maybe 4 patches before this character comes out, like Brant or something like that. And I really want to get Brant, so I'm going to just wait. And then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, we're doing an anniversary convene where Brant's going to be in it. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, now I have to pull, and a lot of people are scrambling. Same thing with Jinsi, Changli. A lot of these newer characters in this second phase definitely came across as, I think, more, like you were talking about with that Chronicled Wish, more, oh, I have to pull. And obviously, this new area has been absolutely insane. Wuthering Waves has been knocking out of the park with character design, the actual world building. They've been doing a lot better than their 1.x era. So I think that there's a lot to kind of be said here and how they're still doing pretty well, although they are kind of lower in the chart.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I actually think, considering WuWa's size, it's a pretty healthy month for them. 25 mil is good for them. It's not, like you said, not stellar, like whoa, but it's still definitely very healthy. Like that's a good area for them to be in. Between 20 and 30 mil is good for them. Same with Zenless, which we'll get to. But like you kind of brought up, I was gonna say the same thing about just this anniversary going on here being similar to the Chronicled Wish. It's that same kind of mindset and that same kind of idea where it kind of maybe caught some people off guard. But the main difference being that while the Chronicled Wish is, bringing back some older characters, and it's like, okay, maybe they're not so meta anymore. They can still barely do the content if you have the right teams and stuff, and they're just likable characters. The main difference here is that these characters are much newer. These are a lot of pretty good meta characters. Yes, it's, Jinshi is not as powerful maybe as Zani, and who knows, maybe I'm wrong because I actually don't play WoWa anymore because of reasons. It's not because I hate the game. I still think the game's beautiful. I love the game. Don't get the wrong idea. But Jinxi's, these are all great characters. Chang Li, Carlotta, she's very recent and she's amazing too. Like you were talking about the design of the characters, Carlotta just knocks that out of the park. If I was still playing WoWa, that's a character I definitely would have gone after. Brant is amazing. That's the main difference, is that these characters have a lot more value comparatively for where
True,
WoWa's
yeah.
at than the Chronicled Wish, the Inazuma Chronicled Wish does in Genshin. Those are older characters, and even so, there are people, waiting for that kind of thing. They wanted those characters. Maybe they wanted Chiori, and were waiting for that because, man, I just like Chiori or something. And the weapons are nice too. So there's a lot going for this. Like you said, this may have caught people off guard. On top of Zani as well. So like it's kind of a double whammy, I think. So spending especially makes sense for
Mm-hmm.
WuWa right here. And then not to mention the new character as well, Sia Chona. Once again, sorry if I butcher that,
However you say
but
the name.
she looks really good too. I liked her design a lot. I watched her trailer. That's probably a character I would have wanted. I just like her design a lot. So definitely a good month for WuWa. Like I said, healthy 25 mil is pretty good for them. So what would you say looking towards the future for them?
I mean, once again, you've got like the next character. I did want to bring that up, especially for them, because the next two characters are gonna be insane. We
They're
have
still cooking.
Cartethia and Lupa. Now, Cartethia has been a character that a lot of people have been keeping their eye on pretty heavily. I think next
Hmm.
month is going to be similar to what they've done here, because once again, I think 25 mil for them. I think they normally probably sit around the range of 15, maybe 20 mil, on the normal side of the months, just because of the other gachas taking a lot of revenue from them. At the same time, I still think that Cartethia and Lupa are going to have the same amount of revenue, so something like 25 mil is very, very good for them. Once again, not stellar. They're not hitting 40, 50 mil and, breaking charts. But I think at the same time, they're doing exceptionally well. And I think that this next month, even though it has 2 weeks of the Resonator Convene as well, of this, anniversary one, I think this next Resonator Convene, this next banner they're going to have with Cartethia is going to be absolutely insane. Now, I know Lupa is going to have like the next month she's gonna be in July. She has more of that revenue. I do think that Cartethia though could probably solo and still hold pretty well. Once again, it's probably, if anything, like a previous month we've had in the past. I know in the one of the recent Gacha revenues, they had one month where one of the characters, I think they did like nothing. And we were like, oh wow, they're doing really bad. And then when we looked at it a little bit closer, that character was basically all alone in terms of revenue. And it was like 15 or 16 mil. So if you had two of those characters back to back, you could easily be at 30 mil easily, right? So if you had
Hmm.
that type of idea, I think that it's going to be the same month here. I think you have the ending of all the Resonator convenes and all that, of the anniversary stuff, and it's like, oh, should I pull, should I not? There's maybe a little bit of pulls, but most of it's just going to be Cartethia here. And I think that a lot of that's going to be her. And I still see a good month being around 13 to 14, maybe 15 mil, with just her basically inside that time period, meaning that I think that it's actually still going to do pretty well.
Yeah, me personally, I think it's gonna be somewhere around 20. I'm just shooting high. But yeah, like you said, I've even seen Cartethia being hyped, and like I said, I'm not in the game anymore, and I haven't been in the game for quite a while. It was before 2.0 that I was still in the game, so it's been a long time. But that being said, I've even seen the Cartethia hype. So yeah, I definitely would agree. Somewhere probably around 20 mil. The one thing I was going to say, though, to further your point is that, and this goes for all of the gachas, the timing is actually a big deal on the gacha revenue because a full month is a little over 4 weeks usually, right? And the banner schedules are only 3 weeks. So the way it can line up, like in this case, where it's only going to be Cartethia for the most part, like that means she's got to solo it, like you were talking about. Whereas like the months previous, the way it can line up with the weeks is just first banner and the second banner are well within the means of the month. So like, let's say a banner just for X gacha, okay? It doesn't even have to be WuWa in this case. If the banner begins very close to the beginning of the month, that means the entire 3 weeks will last through the month. And then the next phase has a like almost pretty much a full week still within the same month. So it's like two phases. Most of their revenue is all within 1 month. And then the next month, because of that, only has the remaining 2 weeks of the other banner, the second one from the first month. And then it does have the new phase, but that new phase will make it through the month and the next phase can't be in that same month. So that next month, the second month in this scenario, then mainly has only that one banner change and a little bit of the remaining 2 weeks from that one banner that's kind of right in between the month change. If you followed that, good job. If you didn't, okay, because that was a lot of talking and I probably just made that sound really confusing. But if you get it, you get it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like what you're saying, it's basically exactly what's happening here. The 2 weeks of this past banner of that anniversary convene is going to be happening in June. So basically, Cartethia just has to basically solo carry this month, which we're going to see what she does there actually a little bit later. Now, later on, and if we scroll even further, Zenless has taken a pretty big hit and is at 16th place. They've jumped from 6th place down all the way to 10th. Now, once again,
Wow.
they've halved their revenue. So they've already done a little bit worse for wear in their month. And it definitely goes to show with already the other gachas doing better in their month and Zenless taking half their revenue. I mean, they definitely fell really hard. But let's see why. So with basically literally at, almost 11 mil, let's see what the problem was. So you have another similar situation with this recent, with Cartethia kind of idea, with we're going to see probably with WuWa in June. Here, the first 2 weeks of, or the last 2 weeks of the 1.7 banner, phase 1 is Vivian and Jane Doe. So as you can see here, the last 2 weeks of the Vivian and Jane Doe banner are running in the month of May, and therefore that first phase is practically, that first week always is usually where most of that revenue is taken up. The last 2 weeks is everybody just kind of scrambling pulls together. So that's the idea with at least this month, which is why I don't think that they did well, and why they have half of their pulls. Now, who's coming next, right? Who's our idea for the next little bit? Well, right now, at the very least, we have the next little bit, at least who we had was Hugo. Now, Hugo, although was doing absolutely insane, Hugo and Lighter were our next two characters. They still did pretty well, considering, once again, the kind of attack that they basically had to take. They really only had maybe 2 weeks to run here, and therefore did pretty well with what they could.
Yeah, I think you're right. Just like I was explaining earlier, this is actually a better example of what I was trying to convey, where most of those Vivian pulls, like you said, are actually at the tail end of April, just because it was that first week. That's not to say that those last 2 weeks that did extend into May, people weren't pulling or even spending, like you said, just kind of scrounging, it's just that most of the people that were waiting for her were doing it as soon as the banner was ready. So you kind of get the idea there. And then Jane, same thing there. It's mostly in April if they were pulling. I feel like Vivian obviously had most of that because she was the new character. So moving ahead from that, like Vixen was saying, Hugo and Lighter I think is most of the revenue, especially Hugo. Now the thing with Hugo is he's an awesome character, amazing, crazy damage, multi-million with that totalized from the skill. It's insane. Thing is, I know a lot of players have Miyabi because when she came out, she was insane, and a lot of people just went after that even if they weren't planning for it because she's insane. Case in point. And yes, she's not an ice DPS technically because she has her own attribute, Frost. I get it. Thing is, I feel like for most people, if they already had Miyabi, that was an easy excuse to just not pull Hugo. Even though Hugo is cool, he looks awesome, he has really good gameplay, and he does really good damage. He actually fills all of the reasons to be a good pull. He's a good pull character. But Miyabi's existence, I feel like, drew away from that, on top of the fact that 2.0 is just around the corner. And that, once again, is just another good excuse to just not pull. So it's not Hugo's fault. They kind of did him dirty with the placement. Right before 2.0, Miyabi's kind of already out there and people either already have that, or if you're more like me, I don't have Miyabi. I know, crazy, right? But I'm actually saving for her, and I'd rather pick her up when she gets a rerun in early 2.x than to pull Hugo. So Hugo just didn't really make sense for me. I'm just going to wait for Miyabi. And then Lighter is great. I definitely think just Hugo had more of the hype. He's the new character. He's probably going to have more. Now, Lighter, though, is a support, so I don't know. Maybe he actually has literally half of the revenue on himself. People that didn't pull Lighter on his first run, this is the chance to get him, or maybe get his W engine. He's also really good with ice and fire DPSs. Evelyn gets a lot of love from this. Ellen mains, if you're like me, I'm an Ellen main, so I actually ended up picking Lighter for my Ellen, especially after hearing that Ellen's getting a buff, in 2.0, which is crazy. I was so excited for that. So that's what made me turn around and decide, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get lighter for my Ellen, especially because she's getting buffed, because I was kind of on the fence about it. I'm like, well, I don't know if I should be pulling a character for literally the 1.0 character. I should just be looking ahead kind of thing. But when I found out that they're buffing her, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to pull lighter. And who knows, maybe there are a few other people like that. Not a lot, obviously, because, you know, there's just so much to look forward to in 2.0. So I know that's not going to be everyone. And that's also a very specific case for me with Ellen and stuff. But even outside of Ellen, like I said, Evelynn, any other ice or fire DPS, even in the future, Lighter's just a solid character for that. Good stunner, very fun character to use with just the absolute melee wombo combo he's doing. And he's just really fun to play. So solid character. I think he's got a fair amount of the revenue, but definitely Hugo with most of it.
Yeah, I think overall it's just going to see a very interesting push for the future, though, because we do have, if I could, you know, scroll all the way back down, because this is an extremely interesting way they've put this together. But we have once again, 2.x is dropping, so we have 2.0 dropping soon in the month of June. Practically the entire month of June is going to be Yi Xuan and Astra Yao with her first rerun. Astra Yao is an amazing support. Yi Xuan's looking to be an extremely strong DPS, and although she is a ether type character, she has her own way to use ether, so she's even special, kind of like how you were talking about with Miyabi. She has that frost, so she's not really ice DPS. It's a similar fashion with that. And then also starting the 25th of June, we have Jufufu, which I know a lot of people are also looking forward to, and Caesar, that physical defense character that also some people were using as well. So I just think that overall, you know, we have someone like Jufufu who's a stun character. Just another reason maybe why some people didn't pull lighter, maybe because once again they didn't have the ice or fire DPS, but at the same time, you know, another fire stun's coming out soon in 2.x, so they might as well just wait. Also, I think that, like you said, the bigger weight of these future characters is going to happen. I think they're going to have a much better time next month, and next month is probably going to be way better. They're probably going to do way more revenue than what they did this month. You know, the great thing about being and going low is that you can only go up from there, right? Being at the bottom, you can only look up, right? So I think this is going to be one of Zenless's lower months, but there's a lot of reasons for it. It's right before a brand new year version area, whatever you want to call it. So it just goes to show that I think that next month they'll be kind of clawing their way back up a little bit better. And if anything, you know, depending on how the other months do with the other games, I think we're going to see a lot of our gachas that we play kind of back up to the top a little bit better. So we'll just have to wait and see next month.
Yeah, and I think because of this, you know, like you said, Zenless is a lot lower for this past month, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because of the reasons that we have already talked about, because of 2.x mainly, right? So keep this in mind. This may mean that when Hugo does get his rerun, that might actually have more revenue than we expect, just because most of the people that maybe wanted Hugo are like, man, I just can't justify it because I was already saving for 2.0. I don't know, I'm just tight on, you know, my polychromes. I can't do that. You know, so he might have a good time on his rerun. Just something to keep in mind. But also, you know, I think as far as next month goes, for the month of June with Zenless, I think it's going to be amazing. Okay, I'm going to shoot high on this one. I'm expecting no less than 30 million on the revenue, no less. Maybe even breaking 40. I'm shooting really high for this because Yi Xuan is supposed to be Miyabi level. If you've looked at calcs and speculations and stuff, she's crazy. It's going to be Miyabi all over again. And like we talked about earlier, it's kind of this timing thing where she's going to be here for the entire month of June, but then also those revenue and pulls for Jufufu is also, that for her first week is going to also be in June. So there's a lot of revenue that I feel like that's just about to explode here in June, because Jufufu, I think, is going to be like Yi Xuan's best in slot, you know, support as her stunner and stuff like that. So I really just think June's going to pop off with the pulls. People are saving for this, Yi Xuan especially, but Jufufu has a really good case for her as well, just because she's a new character. She's probably really, really good, best in slot with the new best character, Yi Xuan. So I'm shooting high for June.
Yeah, we'll definitely see what's going to happen there with the upcoming months, especially with Zenless. I'm interested to see probably a little bit of a better turn of events than they've probably recently had in the past months. But really, that's everything we have to say with all the gacha revenue. Looking at everything we've talked about, kind of our different gachas that we normally do go over and talk about. So if you guys did like the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Let us know what you guys think of the gacha revenue, what you guys think is going to happen in the future. What did this kind of mean this past month, the future month, the present month? What does everything kind of mean for you guys? Maybe some reasonings maybe that we didn't even bring up that you think that would be a good idea to show some people. Go ahead and let us know down in the comments. Thank you guys though for watching the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.